Welcome back. DA Federal Leader candidate John Steenhuisen attributes the party's decline in party votes in last year's general election to a lack of party direction and focus. In his final speech to delegates at the DA's virtual Congress, Steenhuisen said it was time for the DA to rise and address South Africa's challenges of poverty, corruption and unemployment.
I think that diversity is one of our key factors, and we're the only party that's bringing South Africans from diverse backgrounds together into a common set of values and principles. Our policies have got to speak to the 30 million people in South Africa who are poor. There are 30 million South Africans who live below 992 Rand a month. 99.7% of them are black South Africans who are locked out of opportunity and trapped in poverty. Our empowerment models, our focus on clean, accountable government and service delivery focuses on lifting those people up and giving them a chance. Not to keep bailing out and keep state-owned entities, and not to keep putting money into the back pockets of BBBEE fat cats who become millionaires and billionaires. Those 30 million South Africans need our help, and I want this party to get to work putting on a compelling offer on the table to show them how we're going to get them out of poverty and into opportunity, how we're going to get this economy off this terrible low growth, high debt, high unemployment trajectory onto a new prosperity trajectory of hope and opportunity for more South Africans.
Some people paint the DA as a white party. Are you a white party?
Well, I think if you can look behind me today and look at the Congress delegates, you'll see that this is a myth perpetrated by our opponents. More than 53% of people who vote for the DA are not white South Africans, precisely because people realize that this is the one party that is bringing South Africans from all backgrounds together. We're showing South Africa that we're going to get through whatever faces us, but we can only do it when we stand together. Regardless of skin color, religion, age, geographic location, we've got to come together now, or we're going to come apart as a country.
Meanwhile, Mbali Ntuli says she will work to transcend divisions within the party and among South Africans.
If the DA wants to be able to grow, we have to go out and speak to all South Africans, and we must show them that we understand their lived realities, particularly the fact that we still have so much inequality in our country. As a young person, I can't not speak about that, because that's obviously going to affect my generation and generations to come. So it's been at the very core of my messaging that we must head on address the lived realities of South African people.
Some analysts, they painted the DA as a white party. What's your view on that?
Well, I think they'd like to see what is happening right now, and I think that they would find that themselves are wrong. The DA is a very diverse party, and I plan, if I become leader, to make it even more diverse, not just racially, but I think we need to be making space for people in the queer community, people who are living with disabilities who are never seen in our political spaces, and people who have been disadvantaged in many other ways. And that's what I plan to be doing, because I want people to understand that the DA is trying to be a party that is inclusive for all South Africans.
During the last election, to have lost some crowns. Some analysts are saying that you lost some votes to the Freedom Front Plus. What caused that in your analysis, and how do you think that you will do, maybe as we are going to the elections and also to the national elections at some stage?
I think we lost votes across different groupings in our country. I think it was because of policy confusion. I think it was because of the infighting amongst our top leaders, which is why I've put up my hand, because I don't have the baggage of the establishment. I want the DA to be able to charge in a new way for the political discourse of this country. But I really think that what's going to help the DA grow now is not to look backwards and talk about votes that we lost. There's so many South Africans out there, 12 million between 18 to 35, who we haven't even been speaking to. That's the voices that I want to get. Those are the South Africans that we need to really excite to come into politics.
When it's a conference, anything happen. Can either win or you lose. What would happen if should you lose? What would be your what do you do to support the winner, whoever wins the conference?
Well, firstly, whether I win or lose, I'm going to make sure that I reach out to John Steenhuisen and his team to thank them for formidable contestation. Secondly, I've obviously been elected by the people of KZN, so I will continue to do my job that I've been elected for in the KZN legislature, and really take on that particular role, making sure that we make sure that our country is prosperous.
So, as you see there, the DA deciding on whether interim leader John Steenhuisen or former youth leader Mbali Ntuli is fit for purpose to lead the party's over 2,000 delegates, also voting for 2 deputy federal chairs and federal council chairperson. The party dedicated most of Saturday's program to voting and constitutional amendments, which are expected to be agreed upon and implemented. To unpack this, political analyst Professor Somadoda Fikeni joins us now on the line. Professor Fikeni, I'd like to just start off with what Mbali Ntuli there was saying, that obviously she's there because she was being voted on by the people of KwaZulu-Natal, and others arguing that John Steenhuisen having more of a national presence, that this could mean that this elective Congress, like the policy conference, is a conference where really one is going to agree to what's already been decided on. Are people just being pessimistic? Professor Fikeni, can you hear me? Professor Fikeni, let's see if we can get him back on the line. This is the DA's Elective Congress taking place virtually, the biggest event that they've say, and by 2 o'clock we know that they will have decided on a leader. But just some of what's been said, as you heard the DA's John Steenhuisen saying that he's really looking to the party's interim policy, rather it's interim internal review that's going to lead the way for the party, while Mbali Ntuli is saying she's coming with no baggage whatsoever, and it's time that they move away from the past. But the question has been by others if this is something that will really win her favor with the old guard. Well, some critics are saying it would seem that the DA is really moving away from its going back to its liberal roots, and it's moving away from what they see as its social experiment, referring here to what many have said the reason why the DA lost in the last election. A year ago, we know that leader Mmusi Maimane left the party. We do have Professor Somadoda Fikeni back on the line with us. Professor Fikeni, I was referring to the statement made by Mbali Ntuli, saying that she is really there because she's been voted for by the people of KwaZulu-Natal, while others point to John Steenhuisen's national footprint, saying that this could be the reason why the delegates who are there at this elective Congress are really there to decide on a decision that's already being imposed. And I was asking if this is a pessimistic way of looking at this Congress. Is it unfair?
Well, I do think that it is far more than that, because it looks like the old guard of the DA, which is determined to see the DA to return to the old classic liberalism in some form, even though in a conservative way, is more comfortable with John, who has risen through the ranks, who speaks the mainstream language. But they are less likely to embrace Mbali Ntuli, who is seen as an outsider. It is something that goes against the policy decisions where they've taken a position to return to the older DA.
And I want to talk about that. In their earlier statements, which we just played to our viewers, the interim leader saying his campaign is really steeped in the party's internal review report, while Mbali Ntuli says she's looking for renewal that will move forward and not backward. Is this the clear sign yet that then she's on opposite ends with what the old guard that you've just mentioned wants?
It is very clear that she is swimming against the tide, which is a rising tide of the old guard, from a policy ideological perspective. And also remember that here there are old networks of funding of the party, and some of the funders may not be comfortable with the person they see as an outsider, and they see as a person who may not toe the line.
And I want to talk about the outcomes of that policy Congress. So there's an argument that the party is returning to its liberal roots, that it's shed its social democratic experiment, which many say took the shape of Musi Maimane. So would they really brave having a young black leader which will alienate the white constituency, the numbers of which they said were dwindling under him, and want to bring that back?
I doubt very much. The chances of Mbali winning are very slim, precisely because if you look at the DA in the last year and a half, where there was internal division about its direction, it has taken a firm position by returning Helen Zille. It has taken a firm position by saying race will no longer be a factor as such, and therefore they have experimented with Lindwe Mazibuko, they have experimented with Maimane, with Mampele Rampele, and with Herman Mashaba. And I think now they are more determined to return back to their base, no matter how small it might be. And also the funders might be more comfortable, especially at this time of COVID-19, when it's going to be very difficult to fundraise. They'll be more comfortable with the old hands and the seasoned hands. And I even doubt liberalism is the word, because if you look at Europe, you look at the US, the policy platforms that the DA is espousing are often classified more right of the center or even conservative.
So they both agree on the need for job creation. Steenhuisen, though, says that he rejects the SAA bailout and supports more jobs. So it's not a contradiction in terms if the airline is a strategic asset which can be used for mobilization of mass employment.
If you look at the SAA in isolation, yes, indeed, you wouldn't understand the strategic nature of it as an infrastructure. But if you look at it in terms of expanding into some of the strategic reasons, yes, you would understand that. So to them, the privatization is embraced to the core, wherein the role of the state is not seen in any of the state-owned companies, even though some of the countries like China and other Asian tigers, the state has maintained quite a strong role. Even the development financing sometimes comes from that end.
So final question is on this issue of those who argue that Steenhuisen will be more conservative when seeking allies as opposed to Mbali Ntuli, who would probably be more open-minded. Do you share these sentiments?
I share these sentiments, but I do also go beyond that to say, will Steenhuisen be given the space to govern if you do have Helen Zille, who has an overbearing personality and presence as the former leader of the party? And she knows that she's the one who was behind the crafting of the direction of the party. In that paper she crafted whilst at the race relations. So the key question is not even whether he will be conservative, that is given, but whether he will be given the space by Helen Zille, who had promised to keep her lane, but who is not resisting the temptation of being overbearing in her influence.
So John Steenhuisen was saying earlier on that contrary to the detractors of the DA, 53% of its support base is non-white. But if you look at the figures, they lost a significant proportion of the coloured vote, and they didn't increase the black vote by as much as they wanted. So him saying South Africa can only work if the DA works, is this really reflective of the identity and influence of the Democratic Alliance in the country and its support base?
Certainly, remember that the DA was saying it was the most diversified party, even when in Parliament more than 70% was still white, which means their understanding of diversity is simply the inclusion of other numbers without understanding the dominant hegemonic aspect of race in the South African ideologies, in the South African social, political, and economic life. You may have the numbers, but do you have the influence? That is the key question that is actually taken. But more importantly, the point you're raising, what is the trend after the departure of Mashaba and Maimane. That is going to be tested in the coming by-elections and in the coming local government elections next year.
Thank you so much for your time and insights, Professor Somadoda Fikeni, political analyst.